Hey everyone, I'm Dave, aka Tenacious D, co-captain of the Loaded Crows Scenario Paintball team and technical consultant for Scenario Paintball Films. Also, what I want to do now is I want to show you the split fire breach. And I'm showing this to you because if you don't have a split fire T68, this is available as an aftermarket add-on should you decide at some point that you want to upgrade to to the split fire system. Let's take off the split fire breach. First thing you have to do is remove the clamping feed neck. Slide the entire rail and breech unit forward. And we get a closer look at the split fire breech. Right here we have the T68 split fire breech. This is an option that you can add on to your gun later, or you can order it at the time you purchase. It's basically it allows you to determine from which direction the gun feeds. You can either be fed from the bottom through the magazine. Also on the breech is the location of the ball detent. Should you ever need to replace it, just screws off. You can buy replacements. It may look complicated and there's a lot of bits and pieces on the table, but this doesn't take that long. It's not a terribly complicated marker. I mean, there are markers on the market now that you can have apart in 2 minutes. There are markers that it's going to take you an hour or two to take apart. But I mean, this is not a marker to be intimidated of. This is not a marker that you need to have any kind of special training for or take it into any kind of special repair shop to service. Everything here is very straightforward, very simple. And most of the problems you're going to have with this marker are easily explainable. There's nothing, there's no wires that are going to pinch. There's no, boards or solenoids that are going to go bad. It's mechanical, it's straightforward, and it's now pretty simple. Let's start putting this thing back together and getting it back into its full form. Let's start. We're going to put the breech back on first, the split fire system. And you'll notice on the rail there's a slight indent where the feed neck needs to sit. So it's best if you kind of line it up beforehand, then just slide the entire breech back into the body of the gun. Once that's done, you put the screws back in the rail. Next, you want to put the bolt and the hammer back in. Before we do that, it's important just to make sure you put a little bit of oil, a few drops on each one of the O-rings. Very important when you're putting the bolt back into the gun to make sure that the air inlet passage is facing the bottom. And now two things, this can be a little tricky. The charging handle needs to fit over the top of that pin. And just like before, how we had to pull the trigger to get the bolt out, we're going to have to pull the trigger to get the bolt back in. Again, the sear within the trigger frame will hang up on the hammer if you don't do that. So we're going to pull the charging handle out. Lift it up over the top of that pin. And slide it all in together. Pull the trigger and everything will slide forward. Now you want to put the drive spring back in. So you take your back cap, put the guide pin in, put the spring over top of that, and then put the hammer buffer over top the spring. The hammer buffer it kind of serves two purposes. One, it lessens the impact of the hammer coming back and striking the back cap, which if anyone has a gun that has the retaining pins that hold the the back cap in, those retaining pins will break. That won't happen with this gun. It's threads in. They have the buffer there, so it's going to be one less problem. Also, it keeps the spring from bending when inside the gun. Again, a bent drive spring doesn't necessarily hurt anything, but insert that back into the lower tube. You could see a decrease in velocity from it. So that spring threads back in, put the buffer pad in, then just screw it back into place. Take your other back cap, screw that in, and the internals are back in the gun. Obviously, when you do that, you want to oil every one of the O-rings as you're doing it. I took this gun apart a couple times in the past few days, so the rings are still in good shape. You'll notice the little grooves in both of these caps. That's where the set screws fit in on the stock that hold the stock on the gun. Once that's done, we can reconnect the ASA. Let's put a drop or two of oil on those small O-rings. Now let's put the magwell back on. Just slides into place. You'll notice that the magwell is held on by two different size screws. The smaller screws go on the same side as the logo. Once that's on, you can reattach the stock. And the stock screws on like any other tank. Just a few turns. Now at this point you'll notice that the stock is not lined up, it's not square with the rest of the gun. The way that you correct that is with this locking collar. So what I do is I back the stock off just past square, tighten the locking collar, and then straighten the stock, and that'll just lock that locking collar right in place and make it nice and tight. After you do that, you can throw your barrel back on. Just a few turns of that. Take a mag. And you're done.